Hello, I'm Rabbi Elton from the Great Synagogue in Sydney, and our personality today is Rabbi Shlomo ben Yitzchak, known as Rashi, born in 1040 and died in 1105. If we're considering the greatest Jew who ever lived, very high in the list of contenders would be Rashi. His contribution to the understanding of Jewish texts was immense in his own day and has remained really unsurpassed ever since. First, some of his biography. He was born in Troyes in northern France in the middle of the 11th century, but at that time the centre of Jewish learning was still in Germany. So although he was initially taught by his father, he was sent to Worms in Germany, and there he was taught by the students of Rabbeinu Gershom, who we discussed a few weeks ago. He returned only very briefly at each point of the year to see his family, and then in his mid-20s he came back full-time to Troyes, was invited to become a member of the Bet Din of Troyes, and established a yeshiva. And there he taught Bible and Talmud for the rest of his life. His students compiled notes of his discourses, of his explanations, and these became the core of what we now know as Rashi's commentary, which he edited late in life. His coverage of text in terms of his commentary is really extraordinary. He commented on all the books of the Bible, apart from Divrei Hayamim, the books of Chronicles, and for 30 of the 39 tractates of the Talmud. So really one can go through almost the whole of classical Jewish literature available in his time and be accompanied by Rashi along the way. Both the Bible and the Talmud commentary have important aspects which are perhaps less well known. In the case of the Bible commentary, we use the genre of midrash, of rabbinic expositions and expansions of the biblical text, and these are usually thought to have been written in the Talmudic period. In fact, rabbis were still writing midrashim right up to the age of Rashi. The fact was he chose not to write a midrash of his own, but instead to move to the form of a word-by-word, line-by-line commentary, and so change the entire genre of the way rabbis comment and make their views known on the text of the Bible. In the case of the Talmud, in Rashi's age, there was still a great deal of dispute about the correct text of the Talmud. Because the Talmud was only recorded in manuscript form, each community might have a slightly different version of the text. And one of Rashi's tasks that he set for himself was to standardize the text. You'll often find comments in his commentary which discuss what the correct reading ought to be. And he did this in a scientific way by comparing all the manuscripts that came through his hometown. This in effect fixed for all time the text of the Talmud which is received by the rabbinic community and allowed important work to be done in subsequent generations, as we will see. What makes his commentary so useful and so unusual is that it's easily comprehensible to the beginning student, but also contains immense amounts of depth and insight which you continue to discover as you get older and more experienced in learning. So, for example, his choice of which idea to quote on a particular verse can either elucidate it for the simple student, but as you return to it year by year, you see in more and more depth why he chose that particular comment or quoted that particular tradition about a specific verse. As well as being a commentator, he was also a rabbinic leader, and therefore he had to answer many halakhic questions, many questions on areas of Jewish law, and he supplied answers to those who needed his advice and guidance. He was also a religious poet, and he wrote poems which still form part of the Jewish liturgy at different times of the year. The end of his life was very badly disrupted by the First Crusade in 1096, where many of his teachers and his colleagues were slaughtered by the Crusaders going on their way to the Holy Land and to Jerusalem. He himself survived and died in 1105 in Troyes in northern France. His grave was recently rediscovered and a very fine memorial placed on top of it. It's remarkable that a commentary written over 900 years ago is still absolutely standard in all areas of Jewish study, and in fact has become more and more appreciated by the wider scholarly community as well. No one can walk through the garden of Bible or Talmud without having Rashi by their side. Thanks for joining.